Royal DNA test. What is the heritage of the monarchs of Europe? The Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, and the UK. Plus, why is everyone so German? Thank you to Mondly for sponsoring this video. What's more British than the British royal family? More Spanish than the Spanish monarchs? More Norse than the King of Norway? Well, a lot of things, actually. In fact, nearly all 10 remaining hereditary monarchs of Europe have more German DNA than they do local. For centuries, royals almost exclusively married other foreign royals. They rarely mixed their blue blood with people native to the kingdoms they actually ruled over. What's more, when dynasties died out, often from excessive inbreeding, foreign royal houses put their own second sons on the throne, establishing new, entirely alien dynasties. Modern royal families try to brand themselves as thoroughly native and in touch with the common people. And if they ever spit into a test tube and sent it off for a DNA test, they would probably never publish the results. But by looking back at their family trees, we can get a pretty good idea of their actual heritage. Last week, we explored the heritage of the reigning families of Belgium, Denmark, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Monaco, and Norway. Today, we'll analyze the DNA of the Dutch, Spanish, Swedish, and British royal families. Plus, we'll compare them all to see which modern monarchy has the most local DNA, and find out why the royals of Europe are all so German. The Netherlands. The House of Orange-Nassau began with Willem the Silent. He inherited the title Prince of Orange in France, but was a noble of the Holy Roman Empire. In 1570, he led a rebellion against Philip II of Spain and took over as stadtholder of the Netherlands. These elected titles passed down until 1815, when Prince Willem VI of Orange partnered with Russia to kick Napoleon's army out. The Dutch were so thrilled, they proclaimed him King Willem I of the Netherlands. He was about 25% Dutch and 75% German. His father, Willem V, still had some Dutch blood, though his mother, Anne, Princess Royal, the daughter of King George II of Great Britain, was all German. The king's mother, Wilhelmina of Prussia, was also all German. He married a different Wilhelmina of Prussia, which must have been confusing. Their son, Willem II, married the daughter of Tsar Paul I. Grand Duchess Anna Pavlovna was a granddaughter of Catherine the Great. Catherine and her husband Peter grew up in German states and were adopted by Empress Elizabeth of Russia when the Romanov dynasty ran out of heirs. But they did have some Russian heritage, so we'll call Queen Anna 75% German and 25% Russian. Willem III was mentally ill and abusive to everyone around him. He drove his oldest son away, and while living a bohemian lifestyle in Paris, he died at 38. The king's second and third sons also died young of illness. His wife, Sophia of Württemberg, finally got out of her miserable marriage by dying at 58. The 62-year-old king then wed 21-year-old Emma of Waldeck and Pyrmont in Germany. She gave birth to one child, Wilhelmina, who inherited the throne at the age of 10. She was mostly German and only about 3% Dutch. The young queen married German Duke Henry of Mecklenburg-Schwerin. They were initially in love, but the relationship disintegrated. Wilhelmina suffered 4 miscarriages. As her heir presumptive was a German cousin, the Dutch feared that they would be absorbed by the mighty German Empire. In 1909, Juliana was born to much rejoicing. Wilhelmina reigned for 58 years and stood up to Hitler. Juliana married German Prince Bernhard of Lippe-Biesterfeld, whom she met at the 1936 Winter Olympics in Bavaria. They had 4 daughters. Bernhard was unpopular during World War II, but he remained loyal to his adopted country. Their daughter, Beatrix, married yet another German, diplomat Klaus von Amsberg. The Dutch were outraged because Klaus had been a member of the Nazi youth and German army. They rioted at the wedding, but Klaus eventually became a popular member of the royal family. In 2013, Beatrix retired and abdicated in favor of her son, Willem-Alexander, who is the current King of the Netherlands. He is nearly 100% German. He met Maxima Zorregieta at the Seville Spring Festival. He introduced himself as Alexander, and they dated for months before he revealed that he was a prince. Maxima was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina. She has Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese ancestry. She is a descendant of 13th century King Alfonso III of Portugal. There was controversy around the engagement because her father had been a government official during the violent dictatorship of Jorge Videla. Queen Maxima has since become a popular royal. The eldest of their 3 daughters, Catarina Amalia, is heir to the throne and the Princess of Orange. She is about 50% German and 50% Argentinian. Not at all Dutch, but the people don't seem to mind as she enjoys a 70% approval rating. Spain. For 200 years, the Habsburgs, who also controlled the Holy Roman Empire, ruled over Spain. But their penchant for marrying their own cousins and nieces resulted in Carlos II, the most tragically inbred royal in European history. Learn more in my videos how inbred were the Habsburgs. Carlos had a number of physical, mental, and psychological problems. His Habsburg jaw was so severe that he could barely eat or speak. He was also impotent and infertile. When he died at 38, the Spanish Habsburg line died with him. But the inbreeding lived on. He promised the throne to his Austrian cousin, Charles. But King Louis XIV of France disagreed. He had married Carlos's half-sister, Maria Theresa of Spain, so, according to primogeniture, their children were next in line. The War of Spanish Succession lasted 13 years and cost 1 million lives. In the end, France won. King Louis's son and eldest grandson were in line for the French throne, so he sent his 17-year-old second grandson to rule Spain as Philippe V. He established the Spanish Bourbon dynasty, which is still on the throne today. He was about a quarter French and a quarter Spanish, though heavily bred with Austrians on his father's side, while his mother, Maria Anna Victoria of Bavaria, was German. Felipe reigned for 46 years, the longest in Spanish history. He married his second cousin, Maria Luisa of Savoy. She had 4 sons but died of tuberculosis at 25. Only 2 sons survived, and both had a turn ruling Spain, Louis I and Ferdinand VI. Both suffered mental illness and died young and childless. The throne passed to their half-brother, Carlos III. He was the son of Felipe V's second wife, Elizabeth Farnese, who hailed from Parma in modern-day Italy, but had a German mother. Carlos inherited the dukedom of Parma from his maternal relative. He took the Spanish army with him and conquered the neighboring kingdoms of Naples and Sicily, bringing much of the Italian peninsula under Spanish control. He married Polish Princess Maria Amalia of Saxony. Her mother was an Austrian Habsburg. Their son, Carlos IV, married Maria Luisa of Parma. She was his first cousin and second cousin, and had a similar heritage mix with a bit more French owing to her grandfather, Louis XV. Carlos despised his heir, Ferdinand VII, who conspired with Napoleon to force his father to abdicate. He went through 4 wives. The first 3 died young without producing an heir, the second during an agonizing, unmedicated cesarean section. 4th wife, Maria Cristina of the 2 Sicilies, who was his own niece, gave birth to 2 daughters. Ferdinand changed the law to allow 3-year-old Isabella to inherit the throne. His brother Carlos started a civil war, but eventually Isabella took control of Spain. She married Francisco, Duke of Cadiz. They were double first cousins. Their fathers were brothers and their mothers were sisters, so they had the exact same heritage. Despite this, they did not get along. Isabella's affairs and incompetence led to her deposition, and her son, 17-year-old Alfonso XII, was placed on the throne instead. His first bride, Mercedes of Orleans, died of typhoid fever after the honeymoon. His second wife, Maria Cristina of Austria, was a Habsburg. She gave birth to 2 daughters and was pregnant when King Alfonso died at 27 of tuberculosis. The queen delivered a son who became King Alfonso XIII at the moment of his birth. Maria Cristina was regent during the Spanish-American War and the independence of former colonies Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. Alfonso fell in love with Princess Victoria Eugenie of Battenberg, a granddaughter of Queen Victoria, who was mostly German. The infatuated young king ignored the warnings that her family had hemophilia. Sure enough, 2 of their 7 children inherited the deadly blood disease, including their eldest son. This weakness in the dynasty and the many inequalities in Spain made Alfonso unpopular, and the monarchy was abolished in 1931. Following the Spanish Civil War, General Francisco Franco became dictator. He had no sons, so chose to make the former king's grandson, Juan Carlos, his heir. His mother, Maria de la Mercedes of Bourbon, 2 Sicilies, was born to an aristocratic Spanish family with ties to French, Italian, and Austrian royalty. In 1975, Juan Carlos I inherited Spain, and he ended the fascist regime and transitioned the country to a constitutional monarchy. He was married to Princess Sophia of Greece and Denmark. The Greek royal family is not actually Greek, but descended from a Danish prince who was elected King George I in 1863. The Greek royals married a lot of Germans and 1 Russian. Sophia is a first cousin once removed of Prince Philip of the UK. Juan Carlos was a popular leader, but in the 2010s, controversies around his financial dealings ruined his reputation. He abdicated and left the country. His son, Felipe VI, is the current king of Spain. He is approximately 53.5% German, 12.5% Austrian, 7.25% French, 6.25% Italian, 6.5% Spanish, 6.25% Danish, 6.25% Russian, and 1.5% Polish. In 2003, he married CNN journalist Letizia Ortiz Rocasolano. Her ancestors were mostly Spanish commoners, but her maternal grandfather was French, and his wife was half Filipino. Their daughter Leonor is Princess of Asturias, and next in line to the throne. She is about 35.75% Spanish, 26.75% German, 16% French, 6.25% Filipino, 6.25% Austrian, 3% Italian, 3% Danish, and 3% Russian. I'm not just fascinated by royal family trees. I've actually done a good bit of research on my own ancestry. My dad's family is all from Finland. He and my grandma actually speak a good bit of Finnish, and they can communicate with our family living there. But when I visited, I was lost. And it's hard to find a good app that teaches more than just a handful of the most popular languages. That's why I'm so glad I discovered Mundly. This award-winning app is helping 110 million people learn foreign languages. You can choose from 41 different languages, including Catalan, Farsi, and even Finnish. Lessons are recorded by fluent speakers, and audio recognition gives you real-time feedback so you can learn correct pronunciations. Weekly and monthly quizzes help you cement it into your brain. Whether you're planning a trip, a move, or you want to connect with the language of your ancestors, Mundly is the language learning app for you. Mundly is offering an extended Black Friday sale just for my viewers. Go to mundly.app/Lindsay or click the link in the description to get 96% off the lifetime option and start speaking a new language today. Janutekaisen historien, Sweden. In 1809, King Gustav IV Adolf was defeated in battle and lost Finland to Russia. His people were furious and they deposed him. They gave his throne to his uncle, Karl XIII, but he was old, infirmed, and childless. His distant Danish cousin, Karl August, was elected heir, but he died of a stroke at 41. The Oldenburg dynasty were out of heirs, so representatives went to the powerful French Empire to scout out a new king. Napoleon offered his adopted son, Eugene, but the diplomats found him dull and politely declined. Instead, they alighted on a soldier and protege of the emperor, Jean-Baptiste Bernadotte. He was elected heir presumptive and given command of the Swedish army. He won his new people over by forcing Denmark to hand over Norway in 1814. Jean-Baptiste ruled as King Karl XIV Johan. He is the only founder of a current dynasty in Europe to have been a commoner rather than a royal or noble blood. His father was a lawyer, and when he died, 14-year-old Jean-Baptiste joined the army to help support his family. His surname was originally Dupuy, after the city of his birth. He changed it to the more impressive Bernadotte, meaning brave bear, which was the name of a noble ancestress. The Bernadotte dynasty, made-up name and all, is still on the throne today. Karl XIV Johan was 100% French, as was his wife Désirée Clary. She was the daughter of a merchant from Marseille and was engaged to Napoleon Bonaparte. But when Napoleon met Josephine, he dumped Désirée. She ended up with Jean-Baptiste. Considering she was nearly Empress of France, she saw Sweden as a bit of a letdown. Queen Désirée disliked the cold and visited as little as possible. Her only son, Oscar I, married Empress Josephine's granddaughter, Josephine of Liechtenstein. She brought her grandmother's beautiful cameo tiara, which Swedish royal women still wear to their weddings. She also brought some of that ubiquitous German blood. Her mother was a Bavarian princess. Their son, Oscar II, married Sophia, daughter of the Duke of Nassau, who was 100% German. With their son, Gustav V, the lineage leans from French to German and continues that way. He wed Victoria of Baden, who was the first person in the Bernadotte dynasty to actually have a bit of Swedish blood. Her great-grandfather was King Gustav IV Adolf, who had been kicked off the throne for losing Finland. That makes her 12.5% Swedish, but mostly German. Gustav VI Adolf wed Margaret of Connaught, a granddaughter of Queen Victoria. But as we'll soon learn, Victoria's family were pretty much all German. Their son, Prince Gustav Adolf, married Sibylla of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Her father was one of Adolf Hitler's closest associates. This made the princess unpopular during World War II. Sweden remained neutral, but many favored the Allies. Prince Gustav Adolf never got to be king. He was killed in a plane crash in 1947 at the age of 40. His son, Karl XVI Gustav, inherited the throne in 1973 at the age of 27. He is the current king of Sweden and is about 93.75% German, 4.75% French, and only 1.5% Swedish. He met Sylvia Sommerlath while attending the 1972 Olympic Games in Munich. Sylvia, who is fluent in 7 languages, was working as an interpreter. Her father was a German businessman, and her mother was Brazilian of Portuguese and Spanish descent. Sylvia was born in Heidelberg and spent time in Brazil as a child. Her daughter, Crown Princess Victoria, married her personal trainer, Daniel Westling. Most of his ancestors were farmers in the province of Hälsingland. But his father has Forest Finnish ancestry and is a leader in the community. The Forest Finns immigrated from Finland in the 1600s and converted vast northern forests into farmland. We'll call Daniel 75% Swedish and 25% Finnish. His daughter, Estelle, is 37.5% Swedish, 36.25% German, 12.5% Finnish, 12.5% Brazilian, and 1.25% French. She will likely someday be the first monarch of Sweden to actually have a good bit of Swedish heritage in over a century. The United Kingdom. Queen Anne had 17 pregnancies, but none of her babies survived. In 1707, Parliament scoured the royal family tree for the next in line to the throne. Anne's nearest Protestant relative was her second cousin, Sophia of Hanover. She was a granddaughter of King James I of England and VI of Scotland, and now by law all British monarchs must be her descendants. Sophia died weeks before Anne, so the throne passed to her son, George I, who was 75% German and 25% Scottish. He was the Elector of Hanover, a state in the Holy Roman Empire in modern-day Germany. The king did not speak a word of English and disdained his new kingdom. His son, George II, felt differently and declared, "I have not a drop of blood in my veins, which is not English." But that wasn't strictly true. His mother, Sophia Dorothea of Celle, had a French grandmother and a German father, so that makes King George II 25% French, a little Scottish, but mostly German. He married Caroline of Ansbach, another German. Their son Frederick married German Augusta of Saxe-Gotha. He hated his parents and they hated him right back. At 44, he was hit in the stomach by a tennis ball, and the resulting ulcer burst and killed him. So he never got to be king. His son, George III, was the first Hanoverian king born in the United Kingdom. His wife, Charlotte of Mecklenburg-Strelitz, has in recent years been called the UK's first black or mixed-race queen. Her ancestry has been traced to 13th century ruler Alfonso III of Portugal and his lover Madrigana, who may have been a black Moor. But Madrigana and Charlotte were separated by 500 years and 15 generations. If Charlotte did have Moorish heritage, it would have been less than 1%. In reality, she was all German. George and Charlotte had 15 children. The eldest son, George IV, and third son, William IV, each got a chance to rule, but died without a legitimate heir. So the throne passed to the daughter of fourth son, Edward, Duke of Kent. His wife, Victoria of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld, was from a German royal family. Her brother Leopold became King of the Belgians. Queen Victoria was almost entirely German. She was raised by her mother, spoke fluent German, and grew up with a great fondness for her maternal homeland. She married her maternal cousin, Albert. At this point, the name of the British royal house changed from the German Hanover to the 3 times as German Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. They had 9 children, 5 of whom married Germans. Their son, Edward VII, married Alexandra, daughter of Christian IX of Denmark. She brought some Danish blood, but still had a lot of German. Their son, George V, wed Mary of Teck, who was mostly German, but had a grandmother, Countess Claudine Rodai von Kisradi, who was Hungarian. She was born in Transylvania and was a descendant of Vlad the Impaler, popularly known as Dracula. In 1914, the UK went to war with George V's first cousin, Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany. In light of the aversion to all things German, the king changed the royal family name from Saxe-Coburg and Gotha to the much more British-sounding Windsor, the name of his favorite castle. He also decreed that his descendants were no longer required to marry foreign royals, as there were so few left. His son, George VI, married Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, daughter of the Earl of Strathmore in Scotland. Elizabeth was the first non-royal Queen of England since Henry VIII's 6th wife, Catherine Parr, back in 1543. And she gave the British monarchy its first infusion of actual British blood in over 200 years. Their daughter, Elizabeth II, married Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark, who was in fact, wait for it, mostly German. His grandfather, King George I, was elected King of Greece in 1863, but he was a Danish prince with German blood and a brother of Queen Alexandra. His wife was Grand Duchess Olga Konstantinovna of Russia. Prince Philip was the nearest surviving relative of the Romanov family and provided the crucial DNA sample which confirmed when their remains were discovered. Philip's mother was Alice of Battenberg, a descendant of Queen Victoria. Elizabeth and Philip were second cousins through Christian IX of Denmark and third cousins through Queen Victoria. Their son, Charles III, is the current king of the United Kingdom. He is about 57% German, 12.5% Scottish, 12.5% English, 9% Danish, 6% Russian, and 3% Hungarian. His first wife, Lady Diana Spencer, was the daughter of the Earl of Spencer. The English aristocratic Spencer family was established in the 15th century. Diana's mother, Frances Shand Kidd, was from a noble Irish family. Her father was the Baron of Fermoy. Their son, William, Prince of Wales, is married to Catherine Middleton. Her parents, Michael and Carol, are neither royal nor noble, though they are successful business owners. Carol's maiden name is Goldsmith, and there was speculation that she was part Jewish. However, genealogists have dispelled this with 5 generations of church records of Carol's family. So we can call Catherine 100% English. That means the youngest generation of the British royals are 66% English, 15% German, 12% Irish, 3% Scottish, 2.5% Danish, and 1.5% Russian. If and when it's George's turn to be king, he will be the most British monarch in over 300 years. Why is everyone so German? In the 18th and 19th century, importing a German spouse was the fashionable thing across Europe. That is because Germany was not yet a country. The area was filled with minor kingdoms, electorates, duchies, and principalities. Their numerous families held impressive royal and noble titles, but they were also safe to marry. If, for example, the heir to the British throne married the daughter of the King of Spain, and then her elder brothers died and she became Queen of Spain, the 2 massive kingdoms would either have to unite or go to war. And brides from powerful royal families usually demanded that their husband's army support their father's military ambitions. But with a German bride, you got a flashy title without all the dynastic risk. And the superpowers of Europe could maintain balance. In 1871, Germany unified into one nation under the King of Prussia. But the German monarchies maintained their titles, so royals went right on marrying them. Princes with German mothers who had been raised speaking German and enjoying German traditions at home were naturally drawn to German wives. Even if they fell in love with a British or Danish princess, by this time they were really German too. But in 1918, the people of Germany revolted and toppled their many monarchies, and the royal mail-order bride scheme collapsed. With so few princesses left to choose from, many royal families changed their succession laws, so members were no longer only allowed to marry royals. This opened up the marriage market, and since then, princes and princesses have been free to marry people they actually liked from their own country, other nations, or even from Germany. Which royal families are the most German? Averaging the current monarchs and living likely future monarchs from each nation, we see that the Netherlands is still the most German at 75%. 6 generations of Dutch monarchs have wed Germans. However, the last 3 were actually love matches, and considering their geographic proximity, this makes sense. The British royal family is widely known to have strong German roots, but 3 generations of local brides mean today they are only the 6th most German monarchy, with an average of 34% in the living generations. Denmark, Spain, Monaco, and Sweden all have more German DNA. Meanwhile, the Belgian royals, who started out entirely German but suffered heavily during both world wars, have avoided marrying Germans since. Which royal families are the most local? Norway has the most heritage in common with their native subjects. A bit surprising, as King Harald V is one of only 3 current monarchs with virtually no local heritage. But as both he and his son married Norwegians, the future generations are more homegrown. This follows suit in the UK, Luxembourg, Sweden, Spain, and Belgium, where recent generations have married locals. As the 3 micronations have such small gene pools, I'm counting their bordering countries as local. In the last century, modern travel and evolving social attitudes have led to global migration and increased intermarriage. Royals and common people are no longer limited to marrying someone they could reach on a short boat or carriage ride. The populations of all nations have become increasingly diverse, and royal families have followed suit. Royals in Sweden, Spain, Monaco, Denmark, and the Netherlands have wed people with heritage from entirely different continents. So they're not necessarily more local, but they are more diverse and less German than ever before. Want even more tea on history? Check out the History Tea Time podcast. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and check out my other royal history videos. If you really want to help, please consider supporting me on Patreon. A link is in the description. Thank you for watching.